Welcome again to B2B R&D Conversations. I'm the CEO of B2B R&D, Ellen Williams, joined here by my partner and COO, Craig Yoris. Hey, Craig.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well today. So I'm going to start with you, just throw it out there and let you run the show. So what's today's topic?
Well, I was talking to one of our members this week, and they had indicated they were creating a lot of content, but didn't understand why they weren't growing. And so my question then was, is creating content marketing? I don't believe it is. Just creating content isn't marketing. They're doing everything right. They have bought into our vision that video is important. They're creating it, but they don't know what to do with it. So what do companies do when they're creating all this great content, but have nowhere to go with it?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Certainly the internet is full of information and advice on how to create content, but once you have that stockpile, it really is getting the word out about the value that's in the content and where to find it. So content's certainly, I think, the first step to marketing, but you have to take those next few steps to make sure that you're communicating how great your content is and where people can find it. So now we have a host of places we can start marketing it out to. And if it's content that can be posted specifically in those places, even better, right?
Totally agree, but they want to know where to go. Do they go everywhere? Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google+, Pinterest, Instagram, and the list goes on. And I guess they have sort of paralysis when it comes to actually sharing it. They've created some great content, great videos, great blogs, but it just sits on their website. They don't know where to go, and I think they're paralyzed by fear they'll share at the wrong place, fear they'll share at the wrong time, or that they just don't know where to go at all. So what can we suggest to them as to where to start, maybe?
So I think you hit an interesting point, right? So it's number one, creating content, but the second step is sharing, and marketing and sharing definitely, not 100% interchangeable, because certainly marketing is more than sharing, but getting it out there is definitely that first step. So I'm going to come back with one of my favorite answers, right? It depends. So where do you market and how do you market? And the first answer to that is understanding your audience and where they reside. And that certainly will start to set the path on where the best place to share your content is, and then understanding if your content fits the mold for that platform in which to share it.
I completely agree, and both of those things are great advice. But how do they know where their audience is? They've asked me directly, how do we find out where our audience is? We don't know where they are. We don't know when they're online. Are we just spinning our wheels? And I think that's part of their paralysis. I've talked about analytics and insights at some of our info webinars. And I think just that whole idea that there's all this data has also sort of set them back to, it's too much, it's overwhelming. Is there a way for them to find out? Yeah, it is. How do we point them in the right direction?
Well, that's a long answer, right? Because there are multiple steps. First is understanding who you identify your audience to be, and that becomes a conversation about your business in general. What type of content, what type of advice, and who are you creating that content for? Because you shouldn't just be creating content for the sake of creating content, because there's plenty of content out there already. Add something of value, bring something new to the table, but understand who your audience is. And I think once you understand who your audience is, then the next step is to go find them. Now, I think it's easier than it sounds, but it does take a little bit of legwork. There are platforms out there, obviously the popular ones, social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, the ones that you hear in the headlines all the time. And you can also search, on Google, and if it's video, you've got YouTube. But it's really taking the time to go to each one of those platforms. So that there's some legwork involved in understanding who's at the various platforms, how different audiences use the platform. So one of my favorites is Twitter, and everybody's there. And what I mean by that is a lot of people use Twitter for business and a lot of people use Twitter for personal. So if my audience happens to be sports fans, I'm going to find them at Twitter. If my audience happens to be accountants, I'm going to find them at Twitter. It's just understanding how those two different audiences use that platform so that I can contribute in a way that's meaningful to them. What other advice do you have?
That's you've actually really, I think, hit the nail on the head there, that there is some work involved to find the right audience. I'm sort of feeling that the industry, the marketing industry, is doing a disservice to some businesses by just talking about the content and not the actual marketing part of it. We call it content marketing, but I think we're focusing on the content, and I think you basically hit the nail on the head. Find out who your intended audience is and do a search for them on that platform. Twitter being one of your favorites, and it is a favorite of mine as well, because there's so many people there with similar interests looking for the content that people are looking to share. So you can do the same thing on Facebook. You can find people of similar interest looking for your content. If you've got video content to share, I definitely think Facebook and YouTube are the places to be. They are Facebook's looking to take on YouTube in the video marketing area. So I think it's going to be a very interesting few months in that regard. I think part of it is also trial and error. You said it depends. And sometimes it just depends. Try posting that video on Facebook at a certain hour and see what happens. Check the insights that you have on Facebook for when your audience is online, the people who've liked your page. If people have liked your page, you know when they're available. And you share content at that time and see how it does. That's at least my beginning advice.
Yeah, and Facebook is definitely an interesting place to market. They're, focusing on additional functionality on the Facebook business pages pretty much weekly. And as you said, really stepping up into the video game and looking to become a real source of not only, marketing content, but of news, and being able to have their users curate news and that type of information as well. But in addition to the ones we've chatted about, I think LinkedIn has a tremendous opportunity for people to really understand and find people who are in their target market, because not only do you have everyone's profile at LinkedIn, but there are a lot of groups. And so if you're putting, say, video as your content, you do want to put it on a video-centric site such as YouTube. And then that shareability becomes not exclusively on YouTube, but you can post information about that content on your LinkedIn profile in the various groups. So I think LinkedIn gives multiple places where you can communicate and market your content, and Twitter offers multiple times. So I know a lot of people will retweet their own information, not that you can retweet your own tweet, but tweet again slightly differently your original content 2 or 3 days later. Because if you have a large enough following, and most of them are following a lot of other people as well, your tweets are not going to dominate their newsfeed. So the fact that you happen to link to something more than once over the course of, say, 2 or 3 days is really not disruptive, where I think Facebook, it's not the same. I think you don't have that opportunity as much at Facebook.
I completely agree. In fact, I'm going to sort of push the boundary within Twitter and say you could tweet the same information out within a 24-hour period, depending on where your audience is. If you think about an East Coast time frame, people on the West Coast may not see it. So we have to be aware.
Stick to one country?
Well, right, exactly. I was just sticking to the U.S. and the time. Guy Kawasaki, for instance, will tweet out the same content, I think it's 4 or 5 times within a 24-hour period, but he has a worldwide audience.
Right.
So knowing
that we
the
can all
platform,
aspire to.
Completely agree.
Yeah. So definitely creating content isn't the same as marketing content. But I think what I would say to the member you were chatting with is go for it. A lot of what the way in which you'll find the right answer is trial and error. You know, the old adage, right? Marketing is all about test, 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 and digital marketing hasn't really changed that at all.
I completely agree. People, I think, end up, and I'm using the term paralyzed quite a bit, they get paralyzed by fear. I'm going to do something wrong. And I think really in the end, everybody should just really jump in and have fun with it.
Yeah.
Because it's social. Well, let's have a good time. Enjoy yourself. Create videos that are entertaining, that are interesting, and just share them. Worst case is you'll need to create something different.
Or no one sees it.
Or no one sees
it. You put it at the wrong time in the wrong place, right?
Right. But, if that happens and you've posted it to YouTube to begin with, you just reshare it, as you said, through Twitter. A week later, it's new content for your new audience. What about your email newsletters? Maybe that content is shared with your email newsletter audience who may not be attached to you on social media. So we have to think about the various medium besides social. There's email marketing, there's actual ads that you can use your content for. So it really is what they call long tail or long-term content, I think. Agreed.
So there you have it. Creating content is the first step, but then figuring out how to get it to the people that it's intended to reach is step number 2, 3, 4, 5, and that list goes on. So thanks for joining us. We're interested to hear what you have to say. So add to the comments on this video so you can help us create content by creating some of your own. So we'll see you soon, Craig.